Coming up, so I just I'm in the process. I'm like working on something that's live in front of people right now called the U Museum. It was a project I started in Istanbul, and it's performance designed as like a platform that I've designed to last for like 12 months or more, kind of thing. And so it launched launched I guess in October, and then like over the coming months it's gonna like officially launch in different stages. I'm working on the next stage right now, which is like people have like requested invitations to this museum, and they're getting like retargeted ads all over the internet where they see me like in sort of like my regular clothing, but it's like kind of scandalous for the internet, I guess, advertising the museum. But then those spaces eventually become exhibition spaces is the promise, that are modeled after your preferences and browsing history. And I'm using sort of all these like sort of automation workflows and AdWords and stuff in the background to like calculate what's right for people. It's not super advanced by any means, but the idea it will be it's eerie already. It'll be even more eerie as things like start to develop. And so I'm working on that. I have to make literally hundreds of sculptures, which is I like was working late last night. I was like, oh God, what have I signed up for? But I like working that way because it's sort of like I become a slave to the performance in a way that kind of reverses that privilege we were talking about earlier. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I'm also working on several shows for next year. I'm working on like an app that's going to be like hopefully an app that allows us to, it's sort of like communism, like a communist social network. There's very early stages of that, but it's going to allow us to love each other more. I'm working on a show, a bunch of shows, some exciting shows. I'm doing a show at Bitforums next year. I don't know if I'm allowed to announce that. I'm doing a 2-person show with Jennifer Chan in London at this gallery called Furtherfield. I don't know if you know Jennifer Chan, another Toronto-based video kind of internet artist. And yeah, I think the most exciting thing I'm focused on right now though is the U Museum, and that piece is really a culmination of a lot of ideas. I don't know where to start on it, but being in Istanbul, I was there for a residency at the Moving Museum, which is a fantastic, check out movingmuseum.com. It's a fantastic institution that really donated a lot of time. Like basically they're a nomadic institution. They go from city to city setting up exhibitions. They had me out to Istanbul. They've been in London. I think they're going to be in LA next or something. Actually, I don't know that for a fact. But anyway, in Istanbul, it struck me that, when I was there, that there was the politics are very alive if you're there, and they had the Gezi protests last year, but that was still ongoing. It was like protests every day. Like it was like this is crazy. In Toronto, it would have been like, a couple pickets for a few days, and then people would have been upset, but they'd go back and just write angry letters to their MPs or whatever. But there was like sort of everyday protests, still, all kinds of, the politics were raw and alive. But that Gezi Park protest was particularly interesting to me because of how absurd it was. The story most people don't know is that they wanted to, this park is in the center of the city in this sort of shopping district that has become more and more commercial. But it's the only public space for miles around, like the only public park. It's not a it's not a great park, actually. It's kind of like a skeezy park, but it's like symbolically important that this park exists. They wanted to, build a barracks, like not a barracks. They wanted to build a shopping mall and condominium on the park that looked like barracks that had been there during the Ottoman Empire. And I was like, what? Why would they want to make like this military mall and condo? That's crazy. And like, well, it's because there's this romanticism from before the empire fell, because the Ottoman Empire, it was once the center of the world, Istanbul, right? And so that it would be like a great publicity kind of thing. And anyway, people were obviously upset that they would like take away their park, make it like a militarized mall. And so there was, there were protests about it, and they're widely successful. Obviously, this, a kid was hit in the head with a canister of tear gas and he died, and that inflared the protests even more. But it got me thinking like about public and private space in the physical space, and what might be also happening online with net neutrality. And in Istanbul, they were shutting down Twitter and Facebook. They're blocking all of these things, and governments starting to get involved, and capital, like with Comcast in the United States, getting involved in how we access this the largest new public space that we've ever, opened to the world, called the internet. And so thinking about that and looking at like what private space looks like online right now, which is banner sort of areas on websites. Like your website's your public space, and then you've got little banners all over it. Or at least that's capitalized space. I thought, well, what if I could reverse that and turn it into public space again? And I'll spend money to make a museum there. And that museum will follow you around. And anyway, be kind of creepy over time. Ultimately, it's again a naive approach, like that my character has adopted, and he sort of ends up hopefully echoing like the feelings people have over the NSA and being watched, but within an institutional framework that promotes art and well-being. Now the irony is, in Gezi, they decided they would back off the mall thing and instead build a museum, like art museum in place. And so art is often used as this sort of like, it's an approachable way of capitalizing the area, right? Galleries move into an area, they gentrify, be like, it's okay, there's art there, there are artists, they're struggling to buy the thing. Just, whatever, ship the Vietnamese people out. And so the same thing, happens all over the world. It's also happening online, and so this museum's allowing me to talk about all those kinds of things. Hopefully, I don't know if everyone gets it, but I think the NSA thing, I've read, there've been at least a couple people talk about the project online without me like cajoling any of this, and they've echoed those sentiments. So I think when you see a person in a banner like looking at you, and it's me being really creepy, it works. And it's this marketing technology that we all are sort of aware but ignore, because it's normally just like things to buy. It's never like someone confronting you with it. No one's like, hey, look, you're being watched, by the way. Here I am watching you. It's kind of a funny thing to do.